Hey, I'm Christopher Parker, Asheville Fungi, and today we are going to be inoculating some chicken of the woods, and we're going to be doing those totem style on wild cherry. How to inoculate logs totem style. So first of all, we use a piece of cardboard on the ground because if you were to take this log and you were to set these pieces directly on the ground, there's going to be fungi, competitor fungi, that will try to inoculate this log. So what we do is we take the logs and we put some of the sawdust spawn on top of the cardboard, and then we will set the log on top of that. And so that's kind of gives us a little bit of insurance that whatever fungi are on the leaves, on decaying wood, on the ground, they're not going to leap and jump into your logs and start to colonize those. And a second thing that I should mention is that these logs are cut about anywhere from 8 to 10 inches sections. So it's a little bit shorter than what you would usually cut for firewood. Again, these logs are fresh cut, so typically we don't ever use any logs that are over 8 weeks old. If your logs are over 8 weeks old, they oftentimes have started to be colonized by other fungi, which oftentimes will outcompete them and will colonize your logs. So it's best to use fresh logs. So we're gonna get started with this. So this is a 3-pound bag of sawdust spawn of Laetiparus sulphurus. It's a chicken of the woods that I cloned from the east part of Buncombe County. In this area, the tree that I took the mushroom off of for several years in a row, it fruited middle of May, early July, which I missed most of those fruitings, and then again around the end of October. So it's a three-season chicken, which is fantastic. So we're gonna just open the bag and put some of this sawdust spawn on the bottom. So you can reach in and grab it. Don't worry about, as long as your hands are pretty clean, you can reach in and grab it. But I like to spread it out onto the cardboard first. So you create a very small, maybe half an inch deep circle, maybe even not half an inch, maybe 1/4 of an inch. It's according to how confident you are in cultivation. But like I said, this bottom layer is actually more of an insurance policy against competitor fungi. So once we get about the diameter of that log, we will then take the log and flip it over and stack it on top of it like that. So once you have that first one in place, you can then spread your spawn all the way to the edge of this one and then continue just stacking your logs. The larger the logs are in diameter, the easier it's going to be to stack them higher, but you obviously don't want to go so high that you're going to create a very unstable totem. So these will probably go three or four stacks high. That's as high as I feel comfortable taking these. We also have a horse here and a donkey, and so oftentimes they come through the forest, and if they come through and bump them, then they will probably fall over. But that first 2 or 3 months of these logs being in place, that mycelium is really going to run through that. So even if they do get bumped over later, hopefully we would still get some mushrooms. And this is one of the only times that we inoculate logs and put them in place immediately. Other times when we're doing shiitakes or we are doing even reishi, those mushrooms, we inoculate the logs, we stack them up on a pallet, leave them for a couple months, and then put them in their permanent location. These, it's almost impossible to move them without taking them apart. So these need to be done in their permanent location to begin with. So we'll do the second layer of spawn, actually kind of the first layer. So you just put enough spawn on there to cover the cut end. And like I said, all of these logs I cut yesterday, and they were cut and they were laid in my truck exactly the way I cut them, so I know which order to put those in. One of the things you can also do is as you cut the log, you can flip each end up and write like A on each end, the two that go together, B for those other two sutures, and so on and so on. So we're gonna do these two, and this one goes here. It's almost like putting a puzzle back together. So that one goes there, and then we'll do the next layer. This one's actually going to be pretty thick. You don't necessarily need to put it on this thick, but this is one of the fastest ways that you can inoculate logs. Another tip is to also try to make your cuts as flat and straight as possible, because if you end up with slanted cuts like this, then your logs potentially may slide off of each other. And secondly, it also makes it harder to pour the spawn. You can see how it kind of rolls downhill. So try to make them flat. I did not sharpen my chainsaw properly, so that's why I ended up with these sideways cuts. If you wanted to, you could drive a couple pieces of rebar, 3 pieces to keep the logs from falling over. If you wanted to just take one like 5 or 6 feet tall. Still, it's kind of unstable, so I really recommend just doing it the easiest way that you can. So with the 3-pound bag of spawn, we're probably going to get about 3 totems. 3 totems out of this. And then hopefully we may see some chicken of the woods this fall. I'm not really hopeful that we'll see it this fall, but the sapwood, you can kind of see the sapwood in the wild cherry. It goes punky really fast, so that will colonize super quickly, and hopefully we'll see something out of it. If you're using something, a harder wood, such as oak, you're probably not going to see any chicken of the woods out of it for maybe 1.5 years, 2 years. But the great thing about doing the totem style is whenever stuff like chicken of the woods does flush on these larger logs, you're going to get a much bigger substantial flush, which is what we're after. You can also do lion's mane this way. It works really well with maples in this fashion. So we'll put a little more on here because this is going to be the final layer on this totem. And then we've probably went through about a good third of the bag of spawn. And so here we go with this final one. Now, if you wanted to, you could also put, I know some people that put a strip of cardboard. They'll tack a piece of cardboard around here to make sure that the mycelium doesn't dry out. However, I like to do this right before it's going to rain, and it's supposed to rain tomorrow pretty heavily. So this is the final piece of wood that we're going to do on top of this totem. Oftentimes, if we have, like say if we have a tree come down here on the farm, I would actually cut a very small piece off the top, so like a cookie, and then add another layer of sawdust spawn in between there, because what's going to happen, whatever spores land on top of this log, they're going to germinate and they're going to start running through down into this log through the sapwood and even the heartwood. So this mycelium is going to come up through the sapwood. The mycelium of the competing species will come down this way. And so wherever they meet, whoever takes over first is going to colonize most of this top log. So from the bottom all the way up to here is probably going to be chicken. Who knows about this part? Maybe the chicken takes over. Who knows? But oftentimes it's easier to cut a very thin cookie off the top and then put another layer of sawdust spawn. And so again, it's kind of like your insurance policy on the bottom with the spawn. You have another insurance policy on the top, which you potentially only lose a small portion of your wood to competing species. So we have enough spawn in the bag to do about 3 or 4 more totems, and so we're gonna do that. So you can see this is the last one. We've got completely 3 totems here, and we still have a little bit of sawdust spawn left in the bag. If you're more heavy-handed with inoculating, meaning that you put more of a layer of spawn, you're not going to get as many totems. If you put just enough, you're potentially going to get something comparable to this. If you put it very, very thinly, you're going to get more. So it's kind of up to you. Putting it super heavy doesn't have any advantages. Putting a nice even layer that covers the wood does have advantages. It's just an inoculation. Putting it too thin definitely could be disadvantageous because there could be other things that come in there. There could be gaps that insects could come in and eat the mushroom spawn. So yeah, it's a pretty good deal for $11.95. You get 3 totems that are going to produce mushrooms for several years.